So we now have Drag the Bar member Mr. Mateo, also known as Matt. And Matt posted a question saying that he has a hard time receiving and reacting to information my opponents give me, usually on later streets, especially if I don't respect the opponent. Usually the read is to fold. I don't like to fold, and my opponent is poor, so I like to ignore the read and either call down or raise because I hate them. Great question. How long has this been a problem?
Um, it ebbs and flows, but it might be kind of maybe my overriding problem. And in times when I'm able to do better at it, I've seen great success, and in times when I can't, I am treading water and often don't realize I'm not doing very well at reacting until I look back.
Hmm. When you say your overriding problem, what is that?
Um, well, um, I guess folding when I'm
Oh, okay,
behind,
okay,
in general. But
okay. So there are times where you're able to do it where it's not a problem at all, and then there are other times where you feel like it's just an absolute struggle to even come up with the idea to fold.
yeah, yeah, that's a good description.
Okay. Because it almost feels like it's not even an option. It's like it's not even on the table.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes I don't consider it until later, or sometimes I do, but yeah, it's definitely my Achilles heel.
Okay. So if we were to almost um, create like a spectrum of this, where the emotion is probably low, or the whatever it is that's kind of getting in the way here is low, then you're able to fold with no problem. It's easy. So, and then as whatever is rising, then there are times where you can kind of do it and kind of can't, and then there are times where it's just not even close to being an option. Is that a
Correct.
good description? Okay.
Yeah, yeah, that's correct.
Okay. So like what do you think is the reason um, that this is a problem?
Um, well, something I've been thinking about is that, well, for one, if I don't um, think the players should be able to beat me, or if I don't think they're good players, I'll often play down to their level or play worse. Whereas if I'm playing really good players, I've always done pretty good when I get to know my opponents and I respect their games. I fare really well against them. But against someone who I see do something suspect, I will not give him enough credit in the future, and it'll cost me.
Mm, interesting point. So it's almost like you play down to their level in part because you still have whatever weakness you have on your end still is part of your range,
Yeah,
but it's not necessarily known as clearly that that is still a possibility. It's kind of a weakness in the back end that clearly doesn't show up when you're playing against good players because you're stepping up your game and you're playing much more of your A game. You're more excited by it. So, what do you think it is about the bad players, aside from not giving them enough credit? Is it almost like a um, feeling like you don't have to put in as much work to beat them, like that you don't have to be at to pay that much attention to be able to be profitable against them?
yeah, I think so. And part of it is that I think, if I'm playing against someone who plays for a living, a regular,
Mm-hmm.
and who makes really interesting decisions, I tend to think more about what he's thinking about.
Mm.
Whereas a recreational player, I know he has reasons for doing what he's doing, but sometimes I don't really know that in the moment. And so I don't really think about why is he doing what he's doing. I just, where I would do that against a really good player, I try
Right.
and get inside their heads. And the bad player, I'll just calm him down. you're not that good a player. So.
Right, right. There's no sense for me even bothering trying to understand why you're making this decision.
Right, but everyone has motives, and
Yes.
everyone's brain is kind of wired differently. So it would really behoove me to get some understanding of their motives instead of brushing it off.
Absolutely. So, do you have a at this point a clear idea as to how you would go about actually doing that?
I I ran it through the five-step protocol you suggested in the first SNE video,
Uh-huh.
and I came up with for the parts 4, the correction.
Yeah.
I came up with a 4 and a 4B, two
Okay.
corrections. One of them is taking time when I get raised on the turn, 0 insta-calls or insta-re-raises, as the case may be, when I get popped on the turn by a bad player. Whereas, sometimes my fingers take over and I tend to not stop and think, like, why did he do that? What is he having? It's that, I've got a pair of this and I'm going to see a showdown, or I've got this hand and I'm going to see a showdown. So, one fix is to take, a good maybe 6 seconds, or take some time, let the timer wind down a little bit, and think about what he has and what the best course of action is. That's one idea I had. The other one is to stop thinking of players as good and bad, like this is a player who's really tough, this is a player who's not. Instead, looking at all players as having leaks and strengths, and try and figure out, maybe put them, instead of on a pedestal or in a trough, put everyone kind of on a spectrum, and everyone's got some leaks, and not think of him just as a bad player, but try and figure out what his leaks are and how I can exploit them, instead of just labeling them more simply.
I've been wanting to say, I've been wanting a poker player to say exactly what you just said for a long time. Yeah, that second part is brilliantly simple in my view, and will basically accomplish the goal of getting to understand what's going on in their head. So you don't need to set the goal of really focusing on how they're thinking. You just need to set that as an objective for fulfilling what you just said. If you're able to think about them as a spectrum, they have weaknesses and strengths. Your job is to understand them. Your job is to get in their head, no matter what their skill level is.
Great.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think what will happen is that as you do much more of that and really focus on it, and any time during a session, I mean, at this point, the early signs of it are really key to focus on, just as if it was tilt. The early signs of tilt, before you get too far back into thinking in black or white terms or good or bad terms, pick up on this very quickly. And when you're doing that, you're going to begin to automatically take more time. So I think if we were to order, 4A and 4B, I would put B first.
Mm-hmm.
And 4A is, or now the new 4B, taking more time when you get raised on the turn, becomes the situation that you want to really look out for to make sure that you're applying that strategy. But you're going to be doing that strategy more often, just generally, so you build up the skill for it, so that when that time comes, it gets that much more easy.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds like a good plan.
Cool.
The other issue I have with implementing this, I guess, is just more logistics
Okay.
thing, whereas I've done this in my journal, I've written it down as something as I want to work on, but I don't often look at it before my shift, or it's kind of in the middle of my journal now.
Mm.
And so I don't really go to my journal until after my shift, and I need to incorporate it somehow into a warm-up routine,
Yes.
or have it accessible beside me as I'm playing as something I need to think about.
Yeah, you got to dig it out. So what I would suggest is putting together a one-page document that's a reference. So you have a Word document that says something to the effect of developing the skill of seeing players along a spectrum where all of them have strengths and weaknesses. And then under that you have objectives like every time that I sense that I'm moving towards thinking about a bad player as a bad player, rather than getting in their head, I'm going to focus really hard on shifting back into trying to understand what their thought process is here, even if it's clearly one that is poor relative to your skill. Okay. So that would kind of be the reference sheet, and I would really recommend that you spend not only just time before your session reviewing this, but regularly updating this document as a reference that you're essentially studying. I mean, if this is a priority for you in your game, you want to carve out enough time so that not only are you getting repetition for it immediately before you play, but you're studying it as if you were studying, pre-flop decision making. Because you've got to build up the knowledge base so that in the moment you have access to it. Because otherwise, in the moment, it's almost like you trying to dig it out of your journal in a sense, and it's just too hard to do.
Right.
Okay. And then afterwards, evaluate it. So you've got this one-page document that's your reference. It's kind of your handy, kind of like quick start guide. But then you have, ideally, a journal that would be tracking your progress for this. So what that would entail is taking notes about a specific hand where you were able to make the adjustment. So you'll write about what was it that I picked up on that I sensed that I was focusing much more on them being bad? Was it that I said, they're an idiot and it doesn't matter? Or did you feel your brain kind of turn off? You're beginning to get a sense of what those tendencies are so that they become better known. And then what happened when you made the adjustment? Were you able to just automatically click in to that way of thinking for the rest of the session? Did it last for 2 minutes? Did it not even last that hand? What were the results of it? And use that as information that as you build up, not only are you building repetition that creates greater recognition, so that you can pick up on it better in the session, but also you're picking up on important information. So those tendencies are things that you can add to your reference guide that will help you then become better prepared. And this basically just creates a cycle of improvement on this issue.
Okay.
Okay. Is that kind of what you were looking for?
I think that'll help a lot. Yeah, that's
All
great.
right. Great. Okay. Anything else that you can think of on this issue that you've any stones left unturned?
No, that's enough to get me started. That'll go a long way. Thank you.
All right, great. Yeah, you're welcome. That ends the first video in the Q&A series. This is the first time I've done something like this, so I'm really curious to hear what you think about it. Was it helpful? Was it not? Did you like this? You want more of that? Less of this? Whatever you think, I want to know. So let me know in the forums. And until next time, I wish you all very well.